You wake up on Pandora and congratulations, you're a Navi. You're 10 feet tall, blue-skinned, and living in what everyone thinks is paradise. But here's the thing nobody talks about. Being a Navi actually sucks. And I'm not talking about the obvious stuff like humans trying to blow up your home tree. I'm talking about the day-to-day reality of existing as a Navi that makes you realize maybe this whole noble savage thing isn't as romantic as James Cameron made it look. You see, while everyone's busy worshiping the Navi as these perfect beings living in harmony with nature, they're completely ignoring the fact that your entire existence is basically stuck in the Stone Age with some serious biological design flaws thrown in for good measure. And trust me, by the end of this video, you'll understand why being born Navi is like winning the worst lottery in the universe. But first, let me give you some context about what we're dealing with here. The Navi aren't just some peaceful tree huggers dancing around Pandora. They're a species trapped by their own limitations, living with contradictions that would make your head spin, and facing challenges that make human problems look like a walk in the park. I'm going to break down exactly why their so-called paradise is actually a nightmare, and why their entire way of life is fundamentally broken. We're going to cover the technological prison they've built for themselves, the biological disasters written into their DNA, and the cultural contradictions that make absolutely no sense. And here's the kicker. Everything I'm about to tell you is backed up by the actual science and logic that Cameron himself established in his own movies. So let's start with the most obvious problem. You're living in the technological equivalent of the Stone Age, and you're never getting out, ever. The Na'vi have been around for who knows how long, and their most advanced piece of technology is what? A bow and arrow? Meanwhile, humans went from discovering fire to landing on the moon in just a few thousand years. But the Na'vi? They've been making the same stone tools and riding the same animals for millennia. And here's why that's not romantic or noble, it's actually tragic. You see, the Na'vi follow something called the Three Laws of Awa, which basically amounts to a cosmic prohibition against progress. While humans abandoned hunter-gatherer life for the fruits of civilization and knowledge, the Na'vi are stuck in an endless loop of subsistence living. They don't want to know anything beyond what Awa tells them. They're not interested in mathematics, philosophy, biology, or medicine. They've essentially been lobotomized by their own religious beliefs. Think about what that means for you as a Na'vi. You wake up every day knowing that this is as good as it gets. No technological advancement, no medical breakthroughs, no space travel, no computers, no phones, no internet. You're living the same life your ancestors lived thousands of years ago. And your great-great-grandchildren will live exactly the same life too. That's not harmony with nature, that's stagnation disguised as spirituality. But it gets worse. While you're stuck sharpening sticks and riding flying lizards, you're completely helpless against any real threat. When the humans showed up with their machines and weapons, what did the Na'vi have to fight back with? Arrows. Literally arrows against spaceships. The only reason they won in the first movie was because Awa decided to help out at the last minute, sending every animal on the planet to fight for them. Without that divine intervention, they would have been wiped out in about 5 minutes. And here's the really messed up part. This isn't even a choice. The Na'vi aren't choosing to live simply because they prefer it. They're biologically and culturally programmed to never advance beyond this point. Awa acts like their biological computer, storing all their information and knowledge, which sounds cool, until you realize it means they never developed the ability to think for themselves. They're essentially a species of permanent children, completely dependent on their planet parent for everything. Now let's talk about your body, because being a Na'vi comes with some serious biological design flaws that would make any decent evolutionary biologist weep. First off, despite what the movies want you to believe, you're actually weaker than you look. Pandora has lower gravity than Earth, which means your muscles never had to develop the same strength that humans did. So when everyone talks about how physically impressive the Na'vi are, they're wrong. Lower gravity makes you weaker, not stronger. But the real problems start with your tail. Oh boy, your tail. It's in completely the wrong place anatomically. On every creature on Earth and even on Pandora, tails extend from the spine at the sacrum where the hips attach. But your Na'vi tail? It comes out of your spine above the sacrum and sticks straight out at a right angle. It's like someone stuck a random appendage on your back without bothering to understand basic anatomy. And why do you even have a tail in the first place? Tails serve specific evolutionary purposes. Balance for climbers, communication for social animals, or steering for swimmers. But the Na'vi tail doesn't do any of these things effectively. It's just there, creating a massive weak point that any enemy can grab onto during combat. Imagine trying to fight someone when they can just yank on this giant blue rope sticking out of your back. Then there are the breasts. And yes, I know this sounds weird to talk about, but it's actually a major biological problem. The Na'vi are the only species on Pandora with body fat, and that fat is only in their breasts. The rest of their bodies are lean muscle. But here's the thing. Breasts are made of fat deposits and are strictly found on placental mammals. Cameron himself confirmed that the Na'vi aren't placental mammals. So why do they have breasts? Because Cameron thought they looked better that way? Biological accuracy be damned. This kind of sloppy evolutionary design is everywhere in Na'vi biology. Their bones supposedly have naturally occurring carbon fiber reinforcement, which sounds impressive until you realize that carbon by itself is actually soft and pliable. It only becomes hard and strong when mixed with other elements into an alloy. And alloys don't occur in nature. They certainly don't occur in living beings. So you're walking around in a body that was designed by someone who clearly didn't understand basic biology, with a tail in the wrong place, breasts that make no evolutionary sense, and bones reinforced with a material that doesn't work the way the movie claims it does. But the physical problems are just the beginning. The real nightmare of being Na'vi is the cultural contradictions that make your entire society completely unstable. You're told from birth that you're part of a peaceful people living in perfect harmony with nature, but then you're also raised in a warrior culture that glorifies combat and violence. How does that work exactly? You can't be both a pacifist tree hugger and a fierce warrior at the same time, yet that's exactly what Na'vi society expects you to be. The contradiction gets even more ridiculous when you think about it logically. If you're living in this perfect harmony where everyone gets along and nature provides everything you need, then what exactly do you need warriors for? What are you fighting against in this supposed paradise? The whole warrior culture makes no sense unless you admit that Pandora isn't actually the peaceful utopia everyone pretends it is. And here's where it gets really messed up. You're not actually portrayed as real people with complex motivations and flaws. You're noble savages, which is just racism, dressed up as a compliment. The whole Na'vi concept is built on this colonialist fantasy of what indigenous people are supposed to be like. Mysteriously connected to nature, possessing some kind of magical innocence that civilized people lack, and basically less than human in your simplicity. This noble savage nonsense means you can't have normal human emotions like ambition, curiosity, or the desire for something better. You're supposed to be content with your simple life, never questioning why things are the way they are, never wanting more than what Ewa gives you. You're basically a living stereotype designed to make humans feel guilty about their own advancement, while simultaneously reinforcing the idea that primitive equals pure and civilized equals corrupt. But the worst part about this cultural prison is how it sets you up for failure when real threats emerge. Your entire worldview is based on the assumption that harmony and peace will always prevail. But what happens when someone shows up who doesn't care about your spiritual connection to nature? What happens when someone arrives with guns and you only have arrows? The answer is simple. You get crushed. And the only reason the Na'vi survive in the movies is because of massive plot armor and divine intervention. In reality, a technologically primitive society facing a technologically advanced invader doesn't win through the power of friendship and forest animals. They get colonized, enslaved, or exterminated. That's not cynicism, that's history. Speaking environment, because Pandora isn't of threats, let's talk about you're actually the paradise everyone thinks it is. Every single day of your life is a constant struggle against creatures that want to kill you. The floating mountains might look pretty, but they're surrounded by flying predators that see you as lunch. The bioluminescent forests are gorgeous at night, but they're also filled with things that hunt in the dark. Combat isn't some occasional heroic adventure for you, it's a daily requirement for survival. And here's the really brutal part. When enemies attack, they don't come at you one at a time, like in some martial arts movie. As soon as one creature spots you, every hostile thing in the area comes running. You're constantly outnumbered, constantly under threat, and constantly one mistake away from being torn apart by something with more teeth than you have arrows. The reduced visibility in those lush jungles everyone admires makes every fight even more dangerous. You can't see what's coming until it's already on top of you. You have to plan every movement, every hunt, every trip outside your immediate safe zone like a military operation. One wrong step near those explosive plants everyone thinks are so cool, and you're scattered across the forest floor. This isn't living in harmony with nature. This is barely surviving in a hostile environment that's actively trying to kill you every moment of every day. And unlike humans who developed technology to make their lives safer and easier, You're stuck fighting the same battles your ancestors fought with the same primitive weapons they used. But here's maybe the most depressing part of being Na'vi. You're not even allowed to complain about any of this. Your culture demands that you be grateful for your simple life, thankful for your connection to Awa, and content with your place in the natural order. Any desire for something better? Any questioning of why things have to be this way? Any ambition beyond your predetermined role is seen as corruption. You're trapped in a system that romanticizes your suffering while preventing you from doing anything about it. You can't innovate because that would violate the sacred laws. You can't advance because progress is seen as spiritual pollution. You can't even properly defend yourself because developing better weapons would mean embracing the technology that your religion forbids. And the humans who show up aren't even particularly impressive by their own standards. They're just corporate mercenaries with standard military equipment, nothing revolutionary or unstoppable. But compared to your Stone Age technology, they might as well be gods. The gap between what you can do and what they can do is so enormous that it's not even a fair fight. Meanwhile, back on Earth, humans have achieved things that would seem like magic to you. They've figured out how the universe works, developed medicine that extends life expectancy, created technology that lets most of their children survive to adulthood. They're capable of surviving asteroid collisions, traveling between stars, and solving problems that you couldn't even comprehend with your limited understanding of science and mathematics. But you're still trying to figure out which berries are safe to eat. So there you have it. Being a Na'vi isn't the spiritual paradise everyone makes it out to be. You're trapped in technological stagnation, stuck with a body designed by someone who clearly skipped biology class, and living in a society built on contradictions that would make your head spin. You're fighting for survival every single day in an environment that's constantly trying to kill you, all while being told you should be grateful for the privilege. The Na'vi aren't noble savages living in harmony with nature. They're a cautionary tale about what happens when a species gets stuck in an evolutionary dead end and mistakes stagnation for enlightenment. They're primitives who've been romanticized by people who've never had to live without modern medicine, technology, or the basic safety that civilization provides. And the most tragic part? They don't even realize how badly they're trapped. They think their limitations are virtues, their weaknesses are strengths, and their suffering is spiritual purity. They're living proof that sometimes paradise is just hell with better marketing. Next time you're watching Avatar and feeling envious of the Na'vi lifestyle, remember everything we've covered today. Remember that behind all those pretty colors and floating mountains is a species that gave up progress for the illusion of peace and got neither. Trust me, you're better off being human.